Hey everybody, how you doing? Welcome to Zenny62, and I want to talk in a slightly different way than I have before. Maybe I said slightly different, not entirely, not entirely, totally too like massively like, but it's me, right? But I do feel it's necessary to really uh, be. I got the inspiration for this vlog live stream from Taylor Swift, who said on the CBS Sunday Morning show that she wrote songs for her haters. In other words, the question was, why do you write songs for people who don't, as if you're trying to talk to people who don't like your take or what they think about you? And uh, she said something, she says, well, I mean, if they're going to watch, I might as well feed them something, give them what they want, right, in a sense. And I thought, why not? Because I always shy away from it. I'm thinking, the reason is more often than not, uh, people who come out with takes that are in the area of being a hater come out with takes that are really nonsensical, and they're based on emotions that shouldn't be there. Okay, and they more often than not are irrational in their presentation. So I thought, I'm not even going to bother. But and so I'm not going to bother in that context. But there are points that have to be made about this because it falls into the much larger and far more important issue of why Oakland loses its sports organizations. And I think it's something that um, it fully impacts the soul of Oakland and why it feels like Oakland is losing that soul and just spiraling down to this place where it doesn't seem to care about its people, uh, and where it seems that the mayor, and I say this lovingly, not personally, well, uh, toward Oakland Mayor Libby Schaub, who I've known for 32 years, I guess, but it more than one person who is and has held a prominent position in Oakland has said to me that, in so many words, she's rudderless. Okay, and that's not where you want to be in the context of pointing a direction towards sports, the business of sports. Okay, you don't want to be there, and yet, if you listen to them and you believe them, and I don't have any reason not to. We're there. All right. So let me take all of this in one big bow and move forward, and also inform that I reached out to Dave Cavall and his chief of staff. I haven't heard back. They don't call back. They did once, I think, early on, and after that, maybe someone like perhaps Libby said, "Oh, don't talk to Zinni," which would not surprise me. Uh, I will say this: if the A's, or maybe it was Renetti, right? But which I doubt. But my whole point is, if that's the case, that's pretty stupid. And I'll explain why it's pretty stupid a little bit later. Let me get to let me start now and open up by way of a series of emails that I received from a loyal subscriber, or a person who's, hey, if they describe themselves as a loyal subscriber, they're a loyal subscriber. His name is Michael Madjatlesi, and he writes, "Hey Zenny, saw your podcast tonight about the A's Portland issue. Just actually, it's a live stream. It's not really a podcast. I only say that because vlogging and video blogging were popular long before podcasts, and I'm not a person who considers himself one who does a podcast. I do video blogs, which you can want to hear the audio, great, then it's a podcast. But that's, in the scheme of things, minor, whatever. Hey, Zenny, just saw your podcast tonight about the Oakland A's Portland issue. Just so I'm clear, have the A's officially given up on the JLS, Jack London Square location, and staying in Oakland and are hell-bent on moving to Portland, or are they still trying to build in Oakland? If you wouldn't mind the clarification, I'd greatly appreciate it." And what I wrote back was, "Hi, I know I want to say thanks for watching. Thank you very much. Hi. They're planning but not giving up on Jack London Square. The issue is they've been working behind the scenes. It's time to bring this all out into the light. And Zinni, he says, so he follows up with another question. He says, thank you for the clarification, Zinni. So there's 0% chance the A's would sell for building at the Coliseum site. Have there been any setbacks so far with the A's Jack London Square project? Last time I checked, they had all the votes secured at every juncture to move the project forward. And I should have given him an interim answer, but I'll explain what I wrote then, and then I'll circle back and fill in the blanks I should have filled in at that point. And what I write is this. I said, hi, the main problem is the following. 1, the A's will not back off presenting ideas that the community doesn't support. The gondola, which would cause A's fans to literally fly over Oakland businesses that need the money, is a bad idea. 2, the A's don't need to tie up the Coliseum because they can make more money with tax increment financing in Jack London Square. I've actually proven that already here at Oakland News Now with a spreadsheet that you can download and run yourself and test different numbers and whatever you wish to do. Dave Cavall, the A's president, needs to calculate the tax increment financing revenue even as they have a law before the California legislature that allows or will allow them, if passed, to make a tax increment financing district with Oakland City Council approval. Hold that thought. 3, the A's need to remove any idea they're even talking to another city. Okay? Talks are planning. Planning leads to action. Focus on Oakland. Lay out the needs and give a time frame. No taking the eye off the ball. All right? 4, Libby, that's Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf, needs to make a task force of business and community representatives now. Oakland City Council members need to be on it. That's why they're acting like free agents right now. No task force to focus energy and build ownership of the project. And then I write, I can go on, but those are the basic issues. I think I will use that. And he follows up with, thanks, Zinni. That's why I'm a loyal subscriber. And to which I again say thank you very much. Now, I want to come back to his question regarding having all the votes. That's at the Port of Oakland side. The port is dying to get something done down there. They tried with the Let's Go Oakland group. That didn't work out for some of the same reasons that have reared their heads today. And then there was an attempt to have that land used for the common maritime use. They couldn't get any takers. So we're in a sense back to square one, which is basically using Howard Terminal for baseball, an idea that has been around since the year 1999. So yeah, think about it, 1999, 2009, 2019. That's 20 years. That idea is 20 years old. All right, officially, not unofficially. Unofficially, it's longer than that, but it's 20 years old. So what the A's, the interim problem, what I didn't point to in terms of issues, okay, is, and Steve Lowe really laid this out when he complained that the A's had not signed off on the general plan down there. And in total, regarding his question, I don't think I really answered it well. He asked this. He said, is there zero chance the A's would settle for building at the Coliseum site only? And the A's want their cake, Jack London Square, and the ability to eat it too, the Coliseum. And the reason they want that is because they want to be able to sell the land to help finance the stadium. But look, if they just do Jack London Square and they work with an organization like, for example, Legends that Jerry Jones owns, which Legends Hospitality, which is also a naming rights agent, if you will, they're looking at $1.2 billion in sponsorships at Howard Terminal. By my estimation, $500 million more than they would get at the Coliseum. All right. Now the question is is the Coliseum land worth more, even developed, than Jack London Square under a tax increment financing structure? And the simple basic answer is no. Because, first of all, it's the nature of what selling the land is one thing, okay? But selling something that's developed is quite another. And can the A's get $500–600 million for that property in total? As, I mean, around the area. I'm talking about if you tear down the stadium, keep that clear and everything else. No. But they can get a bond issue of about $400 million or north of that at Jack London Square because of the way tax increment financing works. And if you don't understand it, it's really very simple. You have your first year of a calculated assessed value. Proposition 13 allows you, the government, to increase the assessed value of that area that's designated by the A's and the city council. Isn't that cool? The A's get to designate their own tax increment financing zone. Now you would say, Zinni, what does that mean? Okay, your property tax, you're a property owner. It means that normally the $1 that you pay a property tax, well, you pay more than that, but I'm just saying each dollar that you pay is divided up among different what are called taxing agencies. One of them, right now, Pedro, they're kind of on a kind of a jumping kind of year-to-year situation, but I digress. The tax increment financing formula works like this. Proposition 13 allows the county governments to increase the value, the assessed value of the county, or in this case, the redevelopment area that's designated, by 2%. Now you would say, where do they get that power? Well, that power comes from the legislature, in this case, approving a special law, and Governor Newsom signed it into law, saying that the A's, with the Oakland City Council's approval and the help of the Oakland staff, can have this designated tax increment financing area around Jack London Square that includes Jack London Square. The legislation actually names that, okay? And then they would be able to use that property tax that normally is split between the city of Oakland, as I recall, gets 31%, the county of Alameda gets 35%, and then the remainder is split between BART, AC Transit, and the school district, okay? Now, for those of you who will say, oh, they're going to take from the schools, hold on a second. Please, just time out on that, all right? Because there has been, and in this case would certainly be, what's called a tax or taxing agency pass-through provision. And what does that mean? It means, hey, look, okay, you're going to use all that property tax. Let's say I'm BART, and BART says, okay, you're going to use all that property tax revenue that would normally come to me for your project. Well, gee, I need that, especially if I'm thinking about building an extension in your area, right? And so the A's say, and the council says, you're right, let's negotiate a pass-through. So guess what? They wind up getting some of that tax money. All right, that's called a pass-through. And those have been negotiated many thousands of times in the history of redevelopment in the state of California alone. Very common, okay? I calculated that in the A's case, they could afford an $80 million, $85 million affordable housing fund specifically for Jack London Square in that area, from the tax increment financing money that would be thrown off. Normally, under normal circumstances, they wouldn't get a hold of that. Now, here's the beauty of having that provision, that tax increment financing provision at Jack London Square versus the Coliseum. You have larger land value per square foot at Jack London Square than the Howard Terminal, okay? So, let's see, Jack London Square Howard Terminal, than the Coliseum by far, all right? So, on top of that, there's a lot of land turnover every day. What does turnover mean? It means people buying and selling properties. Under Prop 13 law, when something is purchased, it moves up to its market value, whatever that purchase was. As you know, there's been a lot of payment and overpaying for properties in the Bay Area and Oakland housing and commercial land, right? If you have a redevelopment area, you can capture that. So what the A's get as a gift, I mean, think about this, okay? The A's get the gift of being able to collect buku amounts of redevelopment tax revenue from a dramatically increasing in value area of land that is Jack London Square. And folks, the last time we had a redevelopment area goes all the way back to when I first was hired by the city of Oakland to work as an intern, and that was 1988. That was when this Oakland City Council designated the Coliseum redevelopment area, which is 7,000 acres, as what was called first a survey area, because in those days with redevelopment, the way the law was written, you had to do a blight study. If they found blight, then the council said, okay, there's blight there. We officially designate that a redevelopment area rather than a survey area, and property taxes can be collected by the redevelopment agency and move forward. Does that mean that the Oakland gets a chance to create its own redevelopment agency, basically in this case again? The answer would be yes. Yes. And at a time when it has no other competition. So it would put Oakland in a very cool and very envious with respect to other cities' position of being able to have control of billions of dollars of property tax revenue represented by the area that's designated that encompasses Jack London Square and Howard Terminal, okay? They would not have, even with tax increment financing, they wouldn't get that throw off at the Coliseum at all, okay? At all. So when I hear Dave Cavall saying, I want Howard Terminal and the Coliseum at the same time, I'm thinking, he hasn't ran the numbers. And sometimes it's nothing personal against Dave, but sometimes he says things that he states an absolute, but he hasn't actually really done the homework to make sure the absolute is true, okay? It's like he gets this belief and he sticks with it. And it's like, wait, as opposed to, you know what? I need to think about that one. Or I need to research that one to make sure I'm correct. Maybe that's where that comes from. I don't know. It's not it's not a slam. It's an observation, just based on experience. But there it is. The fact of the matter is that if he's in a position where the mayor and the District 3 City Council member, Lynette Gibson McElhaney, who hasn't spoken out against the project yet, have basically paved the way for the A's to come this close to getting approval from the state and the signature of the governor to do a tax increment financing zone at Jack London Square. If the A's walk away from that, they are making a gigantic fiscal mistake. I mean, enormous, okay? Enormous fiscal mistake. Gigantic. And yet, they would, according to all my friends who call me, I haven't heard from years, all of them prominent in Bay Area real estate areas. And when I say prominent, I am not joking. One person was the focus of a surprise party that attracted like 1,000 people, all right? When that person called me out of the blue, that was when I knew I needed to get on my J and start talking about this, because he wanted me to. Talking is planning. For those of you who tried to write and say, oh, this is fake news and everything, I say, with all due respect, you're not thinking. Or you don't live in Oakland, you have no idea of the history that we went through that has led to the departure of first the Warriors, then the Raiders, and now we're looking at the A's. It's always been the same thing. Talking. Let's review, okay? Fred Blackwell was the assistant city manager in 2012 going to 2013. When we would sit down to interview, he didn't want to talk about the Warrior situation because he didn't want to give away anything that he felt the Warriors would be upset about, all right? But in retrospect, the Warriors were two-timing him, because there was San Francisco Mayor Ed Lee aggressively working, talking, which led to planning, up to a point where the Warriors took everybody by surprise in 2012 and had this party that I went to that the San Francisco media mistook for a groundbreaking. I repeat, the San Francisco media mistook it for a groundbreaking. It was not. All it was basically a kind of a fire starter for for a number of lawsuits, not a lot, but a number of lawsuits, major lawsuits that came about. But the handwriting on the wall was, hey, you know what? We are when I was at that groundbreaking, because I asked Joe Lacob, I said, what do you think about getting sued? I expected the lawsuit to come right then and there. I then interviewed Ignacio, and he basically reminded the Warriors, hey, you know, you have a bond issue right now. You owe us, I think at that time he said it was $104 million or thereabouts. And they're still trying to collect that money now, even though it's down to 40 million, excuse me, not 4 million, 40 million. And they still haven't collected on it. The Warriors have still not paid them. All right. Isn't that horrible? And so there's the Warriors. And I'm gonna come back to there later, but there's the Warriors. Start off with talking, and look where the talking got us. And then there's the Raiders, okay? And that was the Raiders saying, oh, by the way, we're going to partner with the San Diego Chargers, and we're going to make a design for this future home for both teams that is kind of a done just in case. No one takes that step to do anything on a just in case basis, hiring an architect, picking out land, working on securing the entitlements, all right? All for just fun, like, oh, you know, we're not gonna do this because we expect our home cities to come through. That was balderdash. They did not believe that at all. And I remember, and at the time, I told Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf the night before the 2015 NFL Spring League meeting in San Francisco that the Raiders were working behind her back, just like a lot of you didn't believe what I was saying, you know. This week, she didn't believe me either. And guess what? She figured out the very next day, after seeing my video, where Mark Davis admitted that he was trying to work to move to Carson at the time. Remember that? Okay. Okay. Then realized, hey, look, yeah, the jig's up and we're being had. That was the first version of it. The second version came with respect to Las Vegas, where the Raiders told us, this comes from Oakland District 7 Councilman Larry Lee personally telling me this, okay? Saying, hey, you know what? The Raiders want to sit down with us to begin talks toward a new stadium, but told us let's wait until they bring Larry McNeil on, who's supposed to be their stadium czar, all right? And wonder whatever happened to Larry McNeil, right? Who's supposed to be the stadium czar, and then they'll come back and sit down at the table, all right? But instead, what they did was this. This is documented. Thanks to Aubrey Clerkin, who was the digital news director at News 3 Las Vegas, who posted a memo about the visit of Mark Davis to Las Vegas to search for a stadium home, all right? A stadium home, okay? Yeah, Rob Iman is like, right, the lease is up in 2013, I stand corrected. It's not month to month. But at any rate, that was a boneheaded error on my part. I should have remembered that. Lots to remember. But at any rate, got to keep that one in mind. Back to my point. The Raiders situation with respect to Carson was revealed, and then in the case of Las Vegas, as I said, Larry Reid was saying, "Hey, look, we're supposed to start our talks." And the R.B. Clerkin, who was a news director at News 3 at Las Vegas, had posted this memo, which I found by accident on Scrib, and I was like, "Whoa!" And I immediately downloaded and started talking about it. I was the first to reveal it. They were the only news organization, only one other. There's only one other that was a very obscure publication, not even in Nevada, talking about how Mark Davis was going to meet or remember, not necessarily Mark Davis, but members of the Oakland Raiders organization. They didn't mention Mr. Davis as being one of them, but they were going to meet with Sheldon Adelson, whose name was directly mentioned, and they were going to tour sites to find a home for the Raiders in the Las Vegas Valley. That's how it was worded, okay? And that was January 28th of 2016. That was basically a week after the NFL vote at the owners' meeting in Houston that I had attended, okay? Actually, it was actually, Ryan, it was before July 19th, all right? That was way before that. It was the official posting, and be careful of that because I've actually reposted it, so you might see something that I was responsible for posting. My point is that this was 2016. It was January 28th when it was originally posted by Aubrey before I posted it. See, it wasn't July. It was January 28th of 2016, and it was a week after the NFL vote. 1 week, all right? And I was at the vote. The videos are here at Zenny62 on YouTube. So basically, Mark Davis had it in the back of his mind to go to Vegas. And thanks to ESPN, in an ESPN magazine article that came out like 2 years later, all right, we discover that Mark Davis had started planning for Las Vegas as far back as 2014. And here is why I say to you, when someone is planning something, when planning is done with the idea the plan will turn into action. What you want is a situation where the Athletics say, we are not planning for any other place than Oakland. You want an absolute, clear as bell, easy to read, easy to hear statement that comes directly from Dave Cavall himself. If it doesn't come from that, then you cannot take the A's work seriously, okay? With respect to them actually wanting to stay in Oakland. Sorry to be so hard, but hey, that is the way it is. If I'm mayor of Oakland, that's what I want to hear from the A's. That's what any organization wants to hear. But instead, what the A's have done on a number of occasions now is put up these situations where the community says, we don't want that, we don't want that, we don't want that, and don't make the adjustment and make it particularly clear of those areas where they have made adjustments, okay? And said, hey, look, we had this configuration, now the community said this, so therefore we're doing that. Oh, and by the way, it's in accordance with the general plan as it's designed, which says X. That is good, that's great community planning, all right? The Athletics have to exhibit that in the way you say, well, how do you know that they've done it? Hey, look, when someone like Steve Lowe, who's a blogger on my site, who, if you ever go to Oakland, you've been to Old Oakland, that's his development project. He's been around, he's old enough to be a father, all right? When he tells you that, it means you haven't done it. I repeat, when Steve Lowe tells you you haven't done community planning, as a longtime Oakland developer, you haven't done community planning. Period, end of story, okay? So, Pedro Gallardo asks, can you remind me how the A's complicated the Raiders trying to build a new stadium at the current site? Well, I'll get to that in a second here. Brian Abbott says, Craig Cheek wants opening in Portland in 2003 in the next 12 months to get started in a stadium according to Register Guard. It's the question for those who don't know is who's Craig Cheek. And Craig Cheek is the gentleman who is over the founder of Portland. The Portland Ballpark. See, Portland Ballpark organization is completely unfair to call them that. But it's Portland in its ballpark. New Portland Ballpark. Portland. It's Portland Diamond Project. Yeah. Like I said, long day. Portland Diamond Project. So, and I have to say, as I talked about this the other night, the Portland Diamond Project is very impressive. Why? Because they have the right partners. They have a 6-person staff already. I mean, paid staff. They seem to be working as volunteers. They've got the mix of people that you want that serve as your development team, save for the financing part. They're a little light on. They're a little weak, not light, weaker than they should be on that part, because they don't have an investment bank that's signed up. That they're partnered with. That's where I would start. For example, when Mark Davis asked me to come up with my stadium plan, I called Piper Jaffray Investment Bankers. Let me tell you something, folks. FYI, get the money out of the way first, okay? Before you do anything in stadium development or any kind of development, get the money. Make sure you got the money. Make sure you figured out where it's coming from. Get the money out of the way first. A lot of you focus on design and everything, and some of you made fun of what I came up with. But I came up with that to produce a revenue stream. Get the money out of the way. But I digress. The Portland Diamond Project, all right? Very impressive organization, because that organization, weaknesses aside, is set up to secure an exclusive negotiating agreement and get to a due diligence and development agreement, and they're privately financed. So think about it. If the A's have, say, $1 billion of private financing lined up, and then they go to a July 17th meeting of the Oakland City Council, and they hear all these people screaming like banshees, they turn around and they get scared. And that's essentially what happened. All right, that's what happened. It means one thing, that the mayor did not, this is Libby's fault, did not build a task force to have a right group on it to mitigate these issues, to have 2 Oakland City Council members, to have members of the Alabama County Board of Supervisors, to have celebrities on, like as many Too Short, Marshawn Lynch, celebrities from the tech, like Tim Westergaard, who is the CEO of Pandora, right? Any number of people that have a stake in Oakland, either financially or emotionally, John Protopopoulos, for example, or both, not only evaluating the plan, but also acting, this is the most important aspect of all, as advocates for the plan. The problem with the Athletics is that outside the fan base, which is all over the place, there's no focused advocacy in Oakland. They've gotten this far with no focused advocacy. That's, he would say, yeah, politically that starts with the mayor. The mayor is supposed to put that together. But if the A's don't have it, and yet they know the Raiders, the mayor is supposed to put it together, all right? You know why I'm talking about it this way? Because I haven't had any water. But then it's up to the Athletics to ask for it. And then if Dave doesn't get it, build it himself, and then invite the mayor to come on it. And if the mayor doesn't come on the task force, he needs to make that publicly known. I don't think, given their relationship, he would have to go to that length at all. But that's what he needs to do. So that's what he needs to do. But, and it's not that Libby has something against task forces. She established a task force for affordable housing. All right? Now, this brings us to the whole Vegas thing that I was talking about and my completing that story. After it was revealed that on the 28th of January that the Raiders and Nielsen were going to talk, the Raiders said nothing to the East Bay entities, which this is a nickname for the city of Oakland and the county of Alameda, and instead had this quiet period and then started going to the meetings. Remember the March 28th meeting of the Southern Nevada Tourism Infrastructure Committee, where Mark Davis showed up with David Beckham and gave that speech. All right. And yet, he comes back to the table with the Coliseum and Scott McKibben, who introduced him at a press conference you can see here at Zenny62 on YouTube in 2016. And so we asked him about, hey, what's happening with the future of the Raiders here in a new stadium? And he says, this isn't the time to answer those questions. Why not? Okay? And so the media, myself included, kind of let him off the hook because, we're all being nice, it's so great to be there, and yeah, it's fine. But in the back of his head, and he's looking at like, don't ask me these hostile questions. They're not hostile questions. They are questions that need to be asked because they're for the good of Oakland and the public to know. Because everyone wants to know, and they're asking, why shouldn't they know? Why shouldn't they know if you are proposing building something so large that it alters the lives of people, if for no other reason than it's a conversation that dominates at points the news, maybe some other kind of news gets pushed out of the way because this is the hot topic of the moment, right? All kinds of reasons. Or it causes so much traffic that, hey, maybe it's near a hospital and it interrupts the ability of people to get to the emergency room when they need to. You get my drift? Okay? So don't ever think that sports isn't important. Anyone who tells you that is trying to be some sort of pseudo-intellectual, like, oh, I am so smart that, I don't need to pay attention to sports. And you have those people running around. You know what I'm talking about. It's always the ones who told you that they never played sports. When you start drilling down in the conversation with them, what they really are trying to tell you is that they don't like any sports where black folks are in it. Because when they say, I'm serious, when they say, I don't play sports, and you would say, okay, well, hey, so what do you do for recreation? Oh, well, I play racquetball. You do? Yeah, I play competitively. Isn't that sport? Or how about golf? That's a sport. Or you get the picture. I hear that all the time. And I used to just smile. But starting about 15 years ago, I started saying, that's a sport, right? Oh, yeah. Well, I guess I just don't like organized sports. Okay, you mean like golf tournaments? There's a lot of veiled racism in there. No one wants to talk about it. You start peeling away the sports they say they don't like, those happen to be sports that have a lot of black folks in them, or had. Things are changing. You start drilling down, you find out how screwed up, how the screwed up aspects of our society start seeping into this issue in Oakland, in the Oakland context, with the I don't like sports types. I don't play sports. I don't like sports. I don't watch sports. And you find it's all a big fat lie. But it informs that idea, what they think about where public dollars should go. It causes some of them to say things like, well, spending public money on sports anywhere doesn't work, which is not true. Okay? Just saying. Now let me come back to the Raiders situation in Vegas. No one asked Davis about the future. He got the lease signed to the Coliseum. And now we come to the A's part, where all of a sudden, we're getting noise from many different people, good people, prominent people, that the A's are talking to the Portland group, all right, about the possibility of working together to build that stadium up there. And if you take a look at what the Portland Diamond Project is doing, it has all the signs of something that the A's want to get involved in. Now the commissioner of baseball has said, hey, I want to solve the stadium situation in Oakland and in Tampa. But hey, newsflash, Roger Goodell said the same thing about Oakland. It's on my site. It's here on Zenny62 on YouTube. Roger Goodell saying to me at the Chicago NFL draft about the stadium situation. Saying the same thing to me at the Philadelphia NFL draft about the stadium situation, saying the same thing to me at the owners' meetings again and again and again. All right, it got so bad that by 2016, when I figured out on at the NFL Spring League meeting 2016 that once again Mr. Davis was working behind the collective back of the city of Oakland with respect to Las Vegas, I not only did I ask Commissioner Goodell about, and that's on here, but I called the Oakland City Attorney's Office. Okay. Someone had to say enough's enough, and I put them on notice. I said, you need to start watching this, and you need to make sure that you have someone that's designated to watch what they're doing, because they're not treating you right. And the reason why I did it that way, straight up, because Roger didn't want the Raiders to leave Oakland. I'm talking about NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell. He didn't want that. So what I was trying to do was pure and simple, put the Raiders over here and the rest of the NFL over there with one comment. And that was the intent. And basically Roger helped me do that by saying this. He said, and it's right here on this channel, the Raiders are, quote, partly to blame, unquote, for their own stadium situation in Oakland. The media that calls themselves journalists, all right, I don't call myself a journalist, you know that. But the media that calls themselves journalists running around never even tried to ask him that, okay? Ever, all right? Ever. And actually, Roger Goodell did not want the Raiders in Santa Clara. The person that wanted the Raiders in Santa Clara was Jed York. But Jed told me, we had a conversation about this some years ago. Jed told me that the main problem was that Mark didn't like the color of the seats. They were red. He wanted something that was switchable. So that was really a Jed York thing. It wasn't something that Roger had asked for. But by contrast, Roger Goodell was specifically and vehemently opposed to the NFL being in Las Vegas because of gambling. Also, he wanted a stadium situation, and it said that any number of times, a new stadium situation in Oakland. And that's how I say it that way, because that's how it was put. Also, it's always important to put time on what you say. Your comment regarding Levi Stadium goes back to 2007. Raiders CEO, now former CEO and constant friend of mine, Amy Trask, has said, and it's documented, that they're quite happy at the Coliseum at the time. So at that time, even the Raiders were not speaking, with that kumbaya voice that matched Jed York, which said, hey, we're going to leave. Hey, we're going to leave. No. She put the kibosh on that in 2007. That's actually documented in the Chronicle. Okay? So, that's documented. So, no. But again, I've seen enough. And when I have friends of mine who have had dramatic impacts on the picture of real estate in the Bay Area, no fly-by-night, call me and tell me what I'm telling you, it is your problem not to listen. But I'm telling you that the A's are talking, and talking is planning. Planning leads to action, and action leads to departure. And the best way to kill that is for the Athletics, if they're serious, to come up and say, you know what? We're not doing that. Don't leave people guessing. Don't leave people with a position of saying, well, I know, or I can't imagine that they would do that, because we've been that way twice before. What's that old saying? Once bitten, twice shy, right? I mean, why does that not apply in the context of this problem in Oakland? Once bitten, twice shy, okay? Once bitten, twice shy. We need to have an organization that says this. leading the movement to keep MLB in Oakland. This one says leading the movement to bring MLB to PDX, to Portland. Sign the petition, okay? Well, we need that for Oakland. We need to nip that in the bud, which leads to the next question that, I would have to ask. Where's the Oakland Chamber of Commerce on this? In the past, the Oakland Chamber would have been a major player in gathering together business leaders. They tried to do that in 2009, when Doug Boxer had formed his task force originally, and then Ron Dellums had the Sports Entertainment Task Force, of which I was a member, and I have a video presentation from that task force meeting. It's called Coliseum City Origins, because it was in 2009 that, for all practical purposes, Coliseum City was introduced to the public, and that was by Bob Lesty, another person I've known for a very long time, who was the developer of the now torn down and replaced by the Kaiser headquarters, MacArthur Broadway Shopping Center, okay? Whose health, oh gosh, I need to check on Bob to see how he's doing. At any rate, I've been around too long. So my point is that Dellums started a task force, but what happened was that the way Dellums did it, and something I hold as a mistake to the great congressman, rest in peace. But he did make this mistake as mayor of Oakland, in that he had the Chamber of Commerce, which I was talking about, his own task force, of which I was on, and Chris DeBenedetti was the chair, who's later become, a writer. And then there was yet another task force that Doug Boxer had put together. And the mayor never got all of them. The mayor never got all of them together. I'm talking about Mayor Dellums. And so I quit, and I made my resignation public in the Chronicle. And the reason I did was because I felt that we were being, in a sense, not taken seriously, all right? That the real group doing the real work was Doug Boxer's group. That's how it was painted. So I'm saying, wait a minute, how come Boxer's group doesn't come to us? If we're the mayor's task force, how come the mayor is not asking that, okay? So, talking about what Dellums had not done was he didn't have that one group. And then Gene Kwan came in, and with respect to the athletics, the idea was that Coliseum City was supposed to be the seat for the athletics. There was never a talk at that time about the A's at Howard Terminal. That didn't resurface until Libby became mayor. It originally came up in 2000, all right? And it was Howard Terminal was one of 7 possible sites. A study was done. It didn't score out as the most popular one. The most popular one was actually, if you know Oakland, the area what we call Uptown Oakland, that's bordered by Telegraph and 22nd and the Fox Theater. And what is there now is an apartment/condominium development of some size. That is where the ballpark was supposed to go. Why didn't it go there? Because on June 22nd, 2002, at 12:32 in the afternoon, in the mayor's office, Oakland Mayor Jerry Brown said on a conference call that, and I quote, "There's not going to be a fucking downtown baseball stadium in Oakland as long as I'm mayor." And then he fired Robert Bob. That's why. You getting the picture? So the best site for downtown stadium was taken off. Boom, gone. And so was its main proponent, Robert Bob. So then, because that was 2002. Then starting in 2004 with Bob Lesty and the late Bob Lesty, Steve Lowe, who I mentioned before, and the late Frank, the architect who basically came up with the plan for the Coliseum City. They're the ones who created Coliseum City. And it was Frank who really pushed Coliseum City forward, got Steve Lowe to get him in to talk with Dellums and eventually meet with us. But it was Frank who started the entire that process, okay? And so the city adopted it, but adopted it as their own. Frank felt like that the city of Oakland, I'm being honest, Frank was very mad at Larry Reed. He felt that Larry had stolen the Coliseum City idea and not hired him in some role and never stopped talking about it. Then he moved to Palm Springs and died in 2010. I have said this before, and I'll say it again. This will be a statue of Frank, the Coliseum, just for trying. And it goes with something else that I've said before, is that in Oakland, no good deed goes unpunished. Again, no good deed goes unpunished. We have a way of crucifying people who maybe they don't have the greatest money or whatever, but we have a way of crucifying people who try to lead us, or have tried to lead us, in a positive direction with respect to sports. I'm not saying it's true for every aspect of Oakland, but with respect to sports, it is. I mean, I can name them, aside from me and the Super Bowl and everything else, but I'm still standing, but I'm talking about people who have tried and been involved and cast aside. Some of them, unfortunately, have passed on. The most notable among them, George Vukasin, the chairman of Pillars Coffee, who left us some years ago, who never received his due for the work that he's done for Oakland. Sure, did he properly report to the city council all the time when he was president of the Coliseum? No. Was he responsible for a lot of great events and works at the Coliseum? Yes, he and the board, including Mary Warren and others. Absolutely. But is there a statue or a plaque that celebrates George Vukasin anywhere to this day? No. Ed DeSilva, same point. Don Parada, former supervisor and state senator, same point. Okay? Maybe there's something about this person or that person you didn't like, but newsflash, a lot of people have done things that somebody else didn't like. That doesn't diminish this. I mean, we're not talking about, the absolute extremes of war or that sort of thing, or war crimes. Or let's take John Russo, our former city attorney, who quite literally was chased away by Gene Kwan, and then Libby didn't bring him back, who's now the city manager of Irvine, one of my best friends to this day. Were it not for John Russo, the 7-page study that you may have seen that included all of those properties and put the focus on Howard Terminal among them and Uptown, he paid for that study. He and his boys around and did tours of baseball stadiums around the country. He wanted this done. John was also the same person that streamlined all of the lawsuits that we had between the Warriors and the city of Oakland. Does he get a statue? No. Does he get derision from some? Yes. Is the derision justified? Hell no, it's not. Or take the latest example, Scott McKibben. Okay? Scott didn't extort anything. Scott didn't ask for a fee that the board, he wasn't due, because the board of the Coliseum JPA sent him out as a consultant, that's his title, He's also the executive director, but hey, his contractual title is consultant. He didn't get paid any health care. He didn't pay into PERS, none of that stuff, all right? He was a straight out consultant. So what happens when he, waits a week and then says, oh, hey, by the way, here's a compensation proposal. And then all of a sudden that's turned into him violating a law that he didn't even know existed. But rather than saying, oh, it's okay, Scott, you've done this great job for us, a number of great jobs for the Coliseum, instead of doing that, what do? They manufacture a reason to get rid of him. And you have bozos saying, well, under his watch, all the teams left. He wasn't the mayor. He wasn't the county supervisor. He wasn't the county supervisors at all, or the county administrator. So whoever says they need to shut their pie hole and go sit in the corner, they know nothing, as usual. And then if it's not that, it's another publication saying, well, he was a public employee. No, he wasn't. He was a consultant. And then the person who wrote that piece, all right, guess what? I'm just going to call it, all right? That was in the East Bay Times. And the person that wrote that piece, that column that appeared about 3 days ago on Monday, worked for Scott McKibben when Scott was the publisher of the Tribune. Now, tell me something. I don't claim to be a journalist, but isn't a journalist supposed to disclose when they had something that might look like a potential conflict of interest like that? And here's a person pointing out a conflict of interest, but doesn't tell you that, hey, he used to work for the guy that he's bashing. And by the way, he didn't like the guy because Scott McKibben was a stickler for reducing costs at the AG newspaper. Don't you think that's something that the writer should reveal when he's writing something emotionally about a person like Scott McKibben? I think so. But does he do it? No. Okay? You see what I'm getting at? You start drilling down with this stuff, you find a lot of behavior that really takes away from the authenticity that the people making these claims want you to believe exists. If the guy doesn't like Scott, he just say he doesn't like Scott because Scott's a Republican. Well, is that your real reason? Oh, Lord. God forbid. Whew. Okay? So, Pedro Gallardo says, if Mark Davis had given Santa Clara a chance, I think we could have waited the A's to build them a new stadium at the Coliseum site. I don't think Mark Davis should have done that. And the reason is simple. Mark would have been in the situation that the Chargers are in that, first of all, it would not have been his stadium. It would not have been the Raiders stadium. You cannot argue that the Coliseum is the Raiders stadium. Say what you will, substandard, whatever. That thing is the custodian of Raiders history, whether the Raiders like it or not. And that's why it shouldn't be torn down. It should be placed on the National Register, and the mayor of Oakland should have done that yesterday. You hear me? Yesterday. But see, the mayor's mindset is, okay, we have a homeless problem. We get that. But what Libby doesn't seem to understand is that by allowing these teams to leave, she's pushing out these jobs that people can get to make ends meet while they're trying to get other jobs. Someone else might say, well, they're low-wage jobs. Okay, we know that. But they're also the kind of jobs that, people in high school would get, or junior high, or community college or college, okay? So you mean to tell me we're supposed to narrow the entire job base down to just people who have a PhD or a master's degree in an engineering background? I mean, come on. But do you see how irrational this entire discussion has become? I mean, I'm talking to an A's fan about this ballpark at the A's Fan Fest of 2 years ago. these two Oaklanders walk by and interrupt us and say, "Oh, that's low wage." I said, "Well, do you know what the average, low wage? Oh, it's low wage. Why?" I said, and they come up with all these arguments that are ridiculous. The average wage of a stadium worker is $68,000. It's not $34,000, because when people do the calculations, they only focus on, I call it the prejudiced view. The prejudiced view is it's only the concession workers. Well, no, you have people who manage the stadium too. You have security staff too, and you have the managers of security staff. You have the people that sell the suites, okay? Marketing, all that. You have to take the whole ball of wax. Not just the ball of wax you see that's in your face when you're going to get a hot dog. Or more contemporarily, a taco. Trip taco. So now you see why I reacted the way that I did. I hope that makes sense. It's not fake news. It's very real. And if we don't take ourselves seriously, we're going to wind up in the same situation again. Okay? Cowboy Wrestler says, simple, the Raiders didn't want to be attendant to their arch nemesis. That's another way of putting it, too. That's another way of putting it. They didn't want to do the cross-town rival thing. And, again, Mark, as I understood it, which still is why I am somewhat, though and not entirely perplexed by the Vegas situation as it stands, he wanted to own a stadium. But it brings me back to a conversation I had with Eric Grubman at the Houston NFL owners meeting, where I said to him, hey, what's going on here? I thought the Raiders wanted to own their own stadium, but what I'm getting back is that in the Las Vegas case, they won't. And he said to me, well, isn't it the same thing if you basically own the revenue stream? That was his take. But technically, the Raiders don't own the revenue stream. Technically, Bank of America owns much of it. Why? Because they have to make sure that the line of credit that was issued to them is being paid back with interest, which, leads to the other point I made again and again and again until the situation changes. The Raiders have not signed up anywhere close to the full complement of founding partner sponsors they're supposed to have in order to adequately finance the stadium with those dollars. It's not there. They got Caesars. Okay, fine. What's that, 150 million? Maybe I would hope 200 million, but it's not. Nope. Pittsburgh Paint. Okay, that's paint. Not a lot of money there. Allegiant Stadium, 400 million. Ding, great. Okay, so we start doing the math and we think, all right, 400 million and 400, 700, but they need 1.1, 400 million, 100 million, 100 million. So they need 700, by my estimation, $770 million still in sponsorship monies. 770 million. Haven't secured that yet. So even if they have cleared part of the hurdle, they still got the rest, okay? You said, what about Credit One Bank? If what about Credit One Bank? What about Credit One Bank? Just asking a question. One day ago. They need 11. Between 11 and 14 founding partners. Okay? All right? The official sponsor and official credit card of the Raiders. Great. Credit one. Now, that's it. Here's the problem. At this point, with its opening to occur in a year, when it was in that position, the Atlanta Falcons' new stadium had nine founding partners, and then that fall they signed up Mercedes-Benz to a $400 million deal. Okay, so they had already cleared $853 million in sponsorships before they put the icing on the cake with Mercedes-Benz. So by contrast, we're looking at Allegiant, Pittsburgh Paint, Caesars, you didn't mention Caesars, okay, and Credit One, okay. They got, you know what? You got, 8 to go. Eight, you got 7 or 8 more. They're not out of the woods by any means. So it's not a matter of, it's never a matter of what about, it's a matter of how many. They're behind. Okay? They're behind. So, but back to Oakland. Now you would say, why do I mention that? Now let me make one thing clear again with that. The Rams are kicking butt with sponsors. In fact, I have to go back and check and see where they're at. When I say kicking butt, they're still largely behind as well. But what causes me to say kicking butt is you say, okay, maybe you don't have as many dollars, but then they turn around, they sign up. I mean, get this, folks. I mean, listen to this, all right? For the entryway, American Airlines is paying a staggering $90 million a year over a 10-year period. That's $900 million. That's just for the entryway alone. That's not the naming right. So American Airlines, all by itself, has come to within $100 million of paying for basically just over 1/4 of the stadium, if the stadium's at $4 billion, with one deal. Okay, that one deal plus Allegiant could, the Raiders got that. They could just call it a night. They call it just say good night, Irene. Sleep well, right? So Inglewood, and in no small measure due to the NFL's personal involvement, the league wants the Rams' new stadium to be wildly successful. They made a point of that every time. The commissioner, I remember that I'm gonna have to break this out too, because I remember the commissioner was talking about the stadiums, and this was at the NFL annual meeting in Orlando of last year, and he said he extolled the virtues of the Inglewood Stadium and on, and then we got to Las Vegas, he says, well, they're building a hole. That spoke volumes right there. I'm thinking he's not enthusiastic about that project. And he's not. It's the gambling issue. It's not just the gambling issue, it's the way it was done. The fact that you have this lawsuit that could turn if Judge not so bright turns bright, figures it out, which I'm not holding out personal hope for. Sorry, but you get to a certain point in life, you just call it like you see it. They need to change venues from that guy. Judge Sparrow is a legend in other areas, but when it comes to this one, he gives me the heebie-jeebies. Okay, I'm not saying personally. I'm talking about from a legal perspective. I'm like, whoa, dude, there's a lot here you don't get, and yet you're our judge. No. Okay. It's nothing personal. It's only business. You should know, Godfather. Nah. Oof. My God. Rob Iman says, time to start thinking about selling ownership stake. Yeah. And then Rob Iman says, I wonder what sponsors the Rams have for Inglewood. I'll get a report on that for you. And Cowboy Wrestler adds, the LA market is priority number one for the NFL. And to which? Where will the NFL Network move its new headquarters? Not the Raiders Stadium in Las Vegas. Oh no. LA. Rams. Inglewood. Just a short hop from Culver City. Boom. Okay. So it's 2:04, and I'm going to show. And I don't feel like I rambled. I made some very pointed points. Yeah, Inglewood, but the main one was that it was this: planning. If you're talking, you're planning. If you're planning, you're preparing to take action. It's been that way in development for as long as development has existed as a process to give us buildings and a better life. Good night, everybody. We'll see you. Oh, the other point is this. If the A's want me to stop squawking, they need to make a real, true, firm commitment to an Oakland-only path of stadium planning and implementation, and work with the community. None of this, well, I guess, and I am, and you don't believe, and all that stuff. Come on. A combination of the new way, Dave Caval making a video that says it, holding a press conference, combined with the old way, taking out an ad in a newspaper or two. You know? We are committed to Oakland. All right? Or how about taking a clip from one of the Captain America movies and saying, I'm with you to the end. Are you with me? To the end. Remember Chris Evans saying that? Oakland, I'm with you to the end. You know what? Maybe they need to commission Captain America as a guest to the Coliseum. And somebody walks up to Captain America, and Captain America's watching the A's game. And the A's fan says, hey, Cap, are the A's with us? He says, to the end. Okay? That's the kind of ridiculous but very effective statement the A's need to make about Oakland. Good night, everybody.